When I put it plainly, UV unwrapping is the method in your pipeline where fuck. UV unwrapping is basically the process of turning a 3D object into a 2D plane. The reason why we do this in the pipeline is to prepare our model, whatever we make, for texturing. It makes it a lot easier to texture. Like, I would love to say we could paint on this now, which technically we could, but it won't be as easy if you've got a very complicated model to work with. Now, if I set you guys an example, a few simple examples, to say the least, of different methodologies of UV unwrapping to make it easier for people. All my friends are like, I don't want to do UV unwrapping. It's so tedious, it's so long, it's painful, it makes me want to cry, and I understand that, I really, really do. But after this video, you should be able to come away with a few pointers on how to efficiently do this without any mistake. Now, I can't guarantee no mistakes because UV unwrapping is very technical. For myself personally, yes, I've had a lot of practice, but I do have two monitors. That means I can look at the model that I'm working on and have the UV map on the far side on the other screen. Now, I don't really have any much more to say than that, to be honest. I will set up these shapes and tell you about the different types of projections that we will use throughout. Some of these will be complicated, some of these will have ease to them, but yeah, it's fairly good. I will place up a diagram on each UV unwrap and show you guys how it's shown, how you can visualize it as you go along. Because if I just throw a lot of theory and words in your face without any visual description, more chance you're not going to get it as a beginner. It will take time, but through this video I hope we can clear that up. So, let me just start with a plane. A one-dimensional, or well, technically a two-dimensional object because you go up and down, but in this it's a 1D, one dimension. So, in our UV toolbar on the upper part, on the upper toolbar, we click on UV, UV editor, and we will be represented with this. Let me just press Control and Space on here to maximize the viewport. Makes it a lot easier to use. Can I change this back to what I used to have? Because this is a more this is a more simplistic look of everything. So I've managed to reset the workspace, and here we are. This is what you will be greeted with, and I'm going to maximize this by pressing Control and Space yet again. So when you're introduced to the UV box or UV editor, you should click on or highlight the object that you're working with, and it will come up here. Now, this is already set because UVs are set to a 1-to-1 ratio, and that basically means it's a square. You have 16 by 9, you have 1-to-1, or 8 by 10, I don't know, 100 by 11, something like that. But this is 1-to-1, complete square, perfect. This is essentially set as it is, but you can delete out squares if you need to, and then these will be shown here. This white border shows the border of the UV map. What can also be shown is, actually I don't know if that can be shown. Okay, so it can't. When it is in smooth view, so when you press 3 on the keyboard, the mesh will turn into a smooth mesh, but the UVs will stay the same. It has to stay the same, and I'll tell you why. This little checker box on here, if you click on this, it will come up with a checker box texture underneath. It's not permanent. It's just to help you understand how your UVs are being affected. So as we can tell, these two squares here are just on the right of U and the left of V. Same thing applies here. That's where our missing squares are. So like I say, very visually explanatory. Now, say if I wanted to move this square here, I would change this, but the UVs still stay the same. But everything else around it gets stretched because we are dealing now with physically stretched polygons. Now, let me just Control Z that. Now, here's where things get different. Say if I went on, hold down right click, UVs, just like the same process that you would do in physical models. Now say if I hold right click, UVs, I select this segment here, this little segment. This is right here, just on the right of the 1001. Now say if I wanted to move these, watch what happens. All of the UVs get distorted, but the mesh stays the same. Now this is the important part. Say if I wanted to put a texture on here, like maybe a brick texture, the same thing would happen. The actual 1x1 image of the brick texture would stay the same on the UV editor, but say if I move the actual UVs of my object on the UV editor, it would show distorted on the physical object in 3D space. Now that's how that works. Now, I can imagine some of you guys are wondering, how are these being projected? Like, we've just seen a plane, Adam. Come on, what's happening? Like, what's actually working in this? Now, let me show you with that. It's pretty well explained when it comes to a cylinder. Now, a cylinder, besides a plane, is obviously a full three-dimensional object. It has a top, it has a bottom, it has sides. So now if we open up the UV editor again with said cylinder selected, it is pretty well done, but I think we can go one better on that. So actually, can we? Yeah, because then I can explain to you guys in the drawing that I could put up right now. This is how it works. Basically what the UVs do, if I select the Cylindrical UV Unwrap, what it would do is create a wireframe of a cylinder, just the side part, and it shoots UV rays from the outside in to the center of this cylinder, and then it creates the entire side of the cylinder as a UV shell. Now that's really good because now we can apply texture to this, and there would be texture to this, and there will be no distortion. There might be a little bit of stretching, but yeah, that's how that works. And the same goes to these, but with this, we can instead planar project it, because like we saw on the plane, it just goes from top down. The UVs get fired from the top downwards through. Oh, actually, that's an interesting thing. This planar UV unwrap is wrong. It's instead telling the PC to shoot UV rays from the side through the side of the sphere onwards. We still wouldn't get any of this. So what we do, we come out of our full view by pressing Control and Space, and on this polyplanar projection on the right side, we get the rotation of the z-axis, so that is rotating this part. So if we rotate that 90 degrees, so therefore it's facing down. We can tell that because this little wireframe piece is dangling downwards. This therefore means that the UVs, apart from getting shot from the side, are getting shot from the top down, and is then projecting a UV shell of the cylinder, the circular part of the cylinder, and the bottom. So you don't have to do one at a time. You can do both as long as they face, as long as they're in line with each other. But that's only the case with a cylinder. It can be also good with, say, for example, if you have a Coca-Cola can, you can do the same method, and they will still be a completely different UV shell. So you could have the top of the can and the bottom of the can completely UV unwrapped, and they'll still be different. And then you can go into doing some tweaks and whatnot. But yeah, now here's the thing. I'm a realism guy. I like to do things realistically. This here is an okay unwrapped cylinder. Like, the top is brilliant. The top is good. We can deal with that. Now the issue is, this here is good, but it's stretched. As you can see, these are all uniform squares, and these are not. These are rectangles. This means there is some distortion. Furthermore, if I click on these and I want to look for any distortion whatsoever, I can click on, let me check, view, yeah. If I click on view on the top of the UV editor, go down and click on UV distortion. These white things here apparently say there's no distortion. Now if I click on my UVs, like if I highlight all of my UVs, shift right click and unfold, that's better. Same goes to these and these. Shift right click and then unfold. These are now all unfolded, and they're within let me just go back. Shift right click, layout UV. Then we can lay these out. We'll straighten this, highlight them all, shift right click, straighten shell. That's a perfect UV map. The only issue with this is that we have a lot of dead space right here. The best thing that you can do to get more UV space is to find a way to clog them up. You can use this method, so scaling the side part of the cylinder into two UV maps, because what happens is, with it being a one-to-one texture, whatever's on here will also get thrown over to there. But if you're doing a can, you'd want the entire thing without a repetition, so it'd be best to have one. But if you, say for example, have a wooden tree trunk and you wanted a seamless wood texture, these are great for seamless wood textures. I kid you not, they are amazing. Because when you do your first mega high UV unwrapping process, you will find that sorry, I'm getting distracted. You will find that the more UVs that this covers, the higher the textile density is. Now I'm going to pause the video right here and tell you about textile density. Now textile density is the say when you have a sphere with the shaded checkerboard and the cubes are really large, including the text. That's got a very low textile density. So when you put this into a game engine and you have a very high texture on it, it won't show that high definition quality that you look for. Instead, it will be very blurry. On the other hand, if you have a sphere that has high textile density, hence the smaller crowd of uniform squares on the shaded checkerboard, and you put a texture on that, it will show that high definition quality. This even applies to a stylized model. Say if you have little itty bitty details in there, they won't go blurry. The sides will stay sharp, and possibly the color too. I don't know about the color because, like I say, I'm more of a realistic guy. This, as a result, if I click on this again, I'll lay it out how it should originally be. Yep, like I said, this is still good. You can still use this. Let me take off the distortion. I go view down and distortion. This is all still good. Everything is within its area. Everything is uniformed. Textile density is uniformed. If you wanted to get rid of these seams, the only thing I can think of is painting over them in Photoshop, Substance. But the other thing that you can do is create a sawtooth effect. So that would mean getting rid of all of these. Sorry, mistake. Basically, what you would have to do is highlight all the inner workings of this cylinder top and bottom. Shift right click and cut these. Now, these are all their own UV shells now. What you can do is highlight the top and bottom of the side of the cylinder, and then you can move them so the edges. Now that takes away the seam, although it makes it very hard on the top. That's why I kind of don't recommend doing this. Unless you have absolute confidence of being able to recover this later on. Shift right click, move and sew edges. So like I say, it's a dangerous thing, so it's best to keep these separate if you can. If you really don't want to live without it, then you can just get one of the edges from either side and shift right click, move sew edges. Oh wait, my bad. Let me just sew these together again. Yeah, so if I get one from either side and shift right click, hover over to move and sew edges, then you get that. It works kind of, but like I say, this is the best way to lay out your UVs, period. As a starter, I would always recommend this. So yeah, that is basically how it's done. Now, the reason why I went so into depth with the cylinder is because I can use multiple different ways to explain what I need to do. The cylinder is the sphere is the same. It has a spherical UV unwrap. You can keep it like this if you need to, but it's completely up to you. It depends on how you want to edit. It depends on the texture that you're going to use for this. At the end of the day, you can do the same. You can cut the top and the bottom off each other. It's completely fine. Oh, get the faces for this. That's fine. They're completely separate. They're a bit distorted on the top here, but we will get to that later. And the same thing applies for this as well. If you were to do, if you wanted these to be great, but then you're struggling with this, you can click on a planar and change the Z rotation to 90. And let me check the scale. So the width and the height, the width and the height should be the same. So we're going to go copy the 0.313 and paste it into here, making a perfect square and a perfect UV map here. Let me lay this out again. So even though I said this is an alternative, it's not the best because you still have non-uniformed textile density. It's very weird. It's insanely. It's insanely weird. This is why I prefer the quad spheres I mentioned in my earlier video. You don't have to worry about this as much because you can just unwrap it like a cube. So I would keep the sphere like this as a sawtooth square. If I unfold this, yes, that's a thing. Let me just try that again. Yeah. So here's the issue. When I UV unwrap, apologies. if I UV unwrap this, or even leave it as it is, and say if I want to do this, click on all the UVs, highlight them all by clicking on dragon or double click one. You can shift right click and unfold if you fancy. Whoops. Yep, that's the issue right there. Now, what's happening here is, this is the distortion part which I was telling you about. View distortion. There's a lot of distortion here, way too much for my liking. And this just won't do well, especially if it's about, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like 1/100th of the size of a texture that you're going to put on. So I'll see if I can try and fix this. Usually the idea about this, if this happens slightly, you can click on Tools and Smooth. This little target pops up here. And what you can do is unfold it. But like I said, it's a risky business because it can turn into this very quickly. You can relax it further and keep on going. You can try and try a little bit more. You can keep trying, and then you get this, which actually didn't turn out too bad, in my opinion. It's really good, but just be careful with it. It's a bit of trial and error. It's not the best way, but as you can see, we're starting to get some results. Yeah, so then we can UVs and lay out this. And it's still okay, to be honest. Let me take the view off. Let me see this, because I've never actually had to do that. They actually turned out really well. A little bit of distortion, but it's kind of dealt better than I expected. So yeah, if I not straighten the UVs, because that's terrible. Straighten the shell. Okay, let me manually do it. Let's see what we got. It seems to have worked well. It seems to have worked really well. Really well. Yeah, so this has worked really well. Sometimes it's good to plan out how you're going to do this. Sometimes adding a few seams down the side can ease that tension between distortions. See if I cut that now and UV unfold it. And then smooth it out. Relax. Unfold. See, it eases off all of that tension immediately. And we're essentially back to square one, where we were. This can obviously be used multiple times, many different ways. But make sure you don't delete your UVs. That would be very bad. The next one would be this. This is a tricky one. This is actually a very tricky one, because I've never had to do anything like this. This one is essentially already done. But let me just explain to you about automatic wrapping. See if you have a very technical, complicated model, and I automatically unwrap it. The rays shoot from every side, trying to pick up the littlest detail, try to get all the edges, and try to get as many groups together as we can. Now, here's the thing. Every tutor that I've seen absolutely hates automatic unwrapping. I humbly request that you embrace it, just for the beginning, to get an idea of where pieces are. Yep, this one here, that one there. Moving saw edges, yep. So that's the thing, you can have an idea where everything is. Now, let me use an example right here. Okay, here we are in this scaled scene for my Christmas market. Excuse me. And you've seen this before, because we touched on spherical UV unwrapping in this apple right here. See if I've got any of the textures still laying about. No, I think I might have put an ambient, an Arnold standard surface on everything. So, let me start off with a complicated object. Say we have, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this one here. Has this been already set out? Yeah, it has. Okay, a little bit something less technical, so it makes it easier on you guys. Let's do this pie. This is very good. So let me singular this out by clicking on Isolate Select on the top toolbar. I'm going to press Control Space again to get my normal view back. And here we have our pie slice, the normal pie, and the dish. Each one of these has its own UVs, like every object, every 3D object. Actually, no, let's do this normal pie shape first. Very nice. First. So we do this normal pie shape. Let's get the UVs back up and Control Space so we have an idea what we're looking at. Say this. I'm just going to mess up this entire thing. I'm going to do a camera-based UV Unwrap. That means we're shooting through our camera to this pie, and it turns up here. So this is it completely this is completely wrapped up, but I need to unwrap it. Like I said, you turn a 3D object into a 2D plane for texturing or baking. I will get to that later. So now, there are different ways you can image this. We can think of it as seams in clothing, what would stick best together. So yeah, we can think of this best as clothes, seams getting put together, seams getting taken off. We can do this like a partitive object, so we can separate the top to the bottom, to the sides to the rim back. And that can work as well. It all depends on how you want to work this around. I have my method, everyone else will have theirs later on in time. What are we at? 29 minutes right now. This is going to be an in-depth video. So if I say get the sides and take these away, deselect these by pressing Control and click to take them away. And by the way, how I do the linear one is the linear select is click on one square. The other one must be a square as well. Shift, double click, and you get the entire linear part of this row, which is great. Same works with columns as well. So, now that I have this, I have to think how I best to get this sorted. I might do the same with this as well, yeah, why not? Get that, shift, click, 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 and click. Nice. So now we have this entire front, and now we're supposed to think how best is it to like UV unwrap this without any distortion. Now my idea would be have a planar map shooting towards the side all the way through this pie, and it should have a straight UV shell of this side completely here. So if I click on plane, and for now it's only showing this one side of the pie because it's shooting a UV ray through the pie as down the x-axis. Now come off full screen. I want to rotate this on its y-axis around the pie, but I want to take this off. Yep. So now we have UVs shooting from the front down the z-axis into the pie. So basically it shows that, as you can see. Now this is fine. This is completely fine. This is completely fine, but there's only one issue with it. As you can see, let me just take away the big boy chunk. As you can see, not only is it Not only is it stretched, but the UV's kind of cut off at here. It doesn't match well, especially if you want to do things like crust and jam or any pattern like that. It's not going to do well. Best thing to do would be to first highlight the entire part of this UV shell, shift right click, unfold, and now we're getting somewhere. So now it starts to loosely follow the shape of the top of the pie. Now this still could be good if you want it, but we can go better. We can definitely go better with this. This is why I'm here, of course. Now, if I, yet again, highlight all my points, all my UV points, shift right click, straighten, UVs, we have a little bit of distortion here, but now you can see on the pie, the UVs follow the shape. Now, if you were to do a crust now, you would have no problem. You could just slap on a crust and it would follow the entire shape of this. This is why planning out your UVs early enough is absolutely paramount. We have the pie here. Now, as we can see, in two examples actually, where this straight part can work. We have the pie here, as we said before, in here, completely straight, it follows a line. It's the same here as well, it follows a line. Doesn't matter how straight the UV is, it'll still follow the line of said pie. And the same goes here as well. So, in addition to that, another good example of this would be the rim. As you can see here, as I mentioned before, if you're doing a seamless texture, sometimes it's best to actually cover over 2 UV squares to increase that texture quality, as we can see. See, if this was just one, we wouldn't get that far. You can change the scale here if you fancy, but this saves you from doing that. Just saves you steps. It makes it more efficient to work with your pipeline before you put it in game, of course. So yeah, that is some of the examples of UV unwrapping. For now, we're getting a little bit further on in this video, and I don't want to keep it too long. But for now, I will cut it here and let you guys digest all of that. It's a lot to take in. Like I say, UV unwrapping is not for everyone, I will agree. But with this video, I hope you guys can understand more of what goes on. In the end of the video, I will put in a little diagram of all of the controls that you might need, because you will definitely need to learn them. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great time, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.